Welcome to Atlanta. Christ, this Officer 5000, Jeremiah, the camp leader of Atlanta. Passover 2025, starting April the 9th, we got the lamb slaughter. April the 10th, we got General Muhammad's flag. April the 11th, we got the black party that's going to have the Hebrew graduation. April the 12th, in Atlanta, Georgia, the 56th annual Passover, the only Passover under Commander Junior Hunter.
Our great and holy King has honored us for turning our lives from the darkness to the light, man. There's no greater gift you can receive than to wake up to the truth and then commit your life to saving your brothers, man. Looking in their eyes and seeing their faces and seeing what they've suffered and what they've gone through and seeing the end of it, man. It is a guaranteed seat in the kingdom of heaven, man. So in the name of our King Yahushua, we dedicate us another Passover of brothers and sisters' lives being saved.
April the 13th, we got the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Shalom.
All right, Shalom, Israel. We the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Start out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander General Yohana. The Friday night, the Friday night Lashawan Qadash class, where we break down the scriptures from a linguistics perspective. Salaki, as I share my screen. Before we get started, Salaki. Before we get started, 1 second. Let me see. Salaki, as we getting started, you know what I mean? If you're watching online, you know what I mean, if there's any issues with the sound or the picture or anything like that, so like if there's any issues with anything like that with the you know what I mean, anything like that, please let me know so we can get it fixed as soon as possible, whatever the case might be. All right, Salakia. Let me just get back right. Bear with me 1 second. I'll do a mic check. Good night. Come on now. All right. Forgive me. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. I mean, share it with your loved ones. We're gonna do what we always do every Friday night, which is going to the scriptures and break down the Hebrew or the Lashawan Qadash, the holy tongue. Right? We'll break it down in the Hebrew and in the English. What your Christian pastor is ill-equipped to do because they're ill-equipped to do it because they weren't put in place to give you the truth. You know what I mean? They were put in place by your oppressor to do actually the opposite, which is to keep you docile and keep you a good slave. You know what I mean? So here in the ISUPK, we break down the scriptures. You know what I mean? Every day of the week, we go into this Bible and get our culture and identity back. You know what I mean? That's your Christian pastors want to keep you keep you ignorant to for the sake of putting money in their pocket. It's something that your oppressor wants to keep you ignorant to keep you, to stay above you, to stay ruling over you, to continue to oppress you. All right. But the one thing that's keeping Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans in captivity is our, us not understanding our culture and identity. Right. We try to integrate to several different types of societies. We try to integrate into American culture. We try to integrate into African culture. We try to integrate into European culture and things like that. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we try to do, as long as if we don't have our culture, it doesn't matter what we try to do. All right. So that's why these classes are so important. So if you got any questions or comments, you go and put them in the chat. You go put them in the chat. Make sure you share it with your loved ones. Make sure you, make sure you got your learning utensils as well. Your notes. Make sure you got your notes with you. Make sure you got your, your pen, your notepad, and things like that. Your books and all the resources that we use here in the ISUPK, so that you can, add to your understanding of Lashawan Qadash, so that you can add to your notes and so that you can get your questions answered. All right. We're going to get started in a second. Bear with me. Salakia. All right. I shared my screen. I got Bible Hub up on the screen. It's going to be, I got the book, chapter, and verse where we're going to be picking up from last Sabbath service. All right. The last Sabbath service, we left off in Exodus chapter 9 and verse 22. We're going to pick up Exodus chapter 9 and verse 23. And we're just going to do exactly what we've been doing. Which is basically, we're just going to use what we already should know. You're going to use what you should already know from past classes, from your notes, things like that. But we're going to be using those things to try to add to our notes, because that's the whole point. And you're going to see what I mean, because as we go through it, just like every class, just like every Friday, I'm just going to be breaking down the things that we've already seen, right? I'm just going to be breaking down things that we already seen and that we've already, went over, that should already be in our notes, that are common and, that are common and ubiquitous in the Lashawan Qadash language, that we see just over and over and over and over again. So nothing is new, right? Like nothing, you might run into one or two different concepts that you might be unfamiliar with, but at the end of the day, what we're going to be going over is not new. So if there's anything that we break down and is not familiar to you, that's a question that you should be asking. And once you hear something that is new, it's either a question that you should be asking or it's something that you should be adding to your notes. And these, the Lashawan Qadash is a language that was simple. That's simple. It's not a difficult language to understand. So lucky. So once it doesn't take long to, get the bulk of the language down. So lucky. Let me mute my Salakia. 1 second. I'm gonna mute my mic for just a second. Then I'm gonna do a quick I guess I can't do that. Give me 1 second. Salakia, and we're gonna get right back to it, all right? Get right back to it. All right. Mike. Bear with me 1 second. All right, we all good. Most High Christ. All right, we straight. All right. All right, cool. All right, so make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel again, and we're gonna go ahead and get started. All right. So where we left off last As a matter of fact, as I'm talking about it right now, let me go ahead and pull it up in the English, because an advantage that I like to take, or an advantage, something I like to take advantage of during what's it called, during Lashawan Qadash class, that we're not able to take advantage of in Salakia, in Sabbath service, Salakia, is that you can go to the scriptures. You can go to the scriptures and read the scripture that we're going to be breaking down in the Hebrew. You can read it in the English, and it'll do a lot for you. You know what I mean? You'll be able to read it in the English, and then once you go to the Hebrew, it'll be a little bit easier to read because you read it in the English, so now you know the sight words. So you read things like tree or earth or water, or, you know what I mean, numbers, or words that are associated with characters like we went over. It'll highlight some of the concepts that we've already gone over. You'll start to see certain things like past tense or future tense, which we're going to go over really soon. Things like that. You'll start to see certain concepts. You'll start to see the doing tense. You'll start to see servile tenses. You'll start to see names, right? Ordinal numbers, cardinal numbers, things like that. Shapes, colors. I know we didn't personally go over a class on shapes and colors, but other brothers in different zones have. But point is, all of these different concepts that I named are going to be things that you'll be able to see easier in English. Like, you know your colors in English, you know your shapes and your numbers in English, you know your you know what I mean? What else? You know what a tree is in English. You know certain sight words like tree, earth, ground, dirt. You know certain words in English a lot better because we speak the language of our captors, right? So where, you know what I mean, the fact that we know our captives language better, or we know our captors language better than our own, so we can use that to our advantage. It's usually a you know what I mean, a disadvantage, but we can use that disadvantage as an advantage by the fact that you know your captor's language, you know certain sight words, you know certain things, you know certain concepts in English. So when you see them in English, you can read them in a Hebrew, and because we went over them concepts in the past, there'll be sight words that they'll pop out to you as well. So even if you don't remember them off the top of your head, if you just see them in the English, it might jog your memory a little bit. And then you read through the Lashawan Qadash, and then you see the word, and as you kind of fumble through it, it'll jog your memory further, and then it'll click a little bit faster than if we just read the Lashawan Qadash, just, you know what I mean, without any preparation. So that's why I recommend for brothers and sisters to just do that. Just recommend for brothers and sisters to go into the English, read it, go into the Hebrew, and then read that. All right, so that you can get that context. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and read. I'm gonna go ahead and read it in the English real quick. And we can I'm gonna go verse by verse, all right? I'm gonna go verse by verse. So book of Exodus, chapter 9 and verse 23. And Moses stretched forth his rod toward heaven, and the Lord sent thunder and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. Salaki. So, because, you know what I mean, even though, right, so case in point, so we're doing a Lashawan Qadash class, right? We're doing a Lashawan Qadash class, and not everybody's familiar with the Hebrew, you know what I mean? But most people are familiar with the 10 plagues of Egypt, right? And that's exactly where we're at right now in Exodus, you know what I mean? Where the Most High is starting to show Pharaoh, you know what I mean, these plagues, you know what I mean? He's starting to show, this really is for Israel. I mean, he's showing Pharaoh, but he already hardened Pharaoh's heart. So the whole point is for Pharaoh to see these plagues and to deny letting the people go, letting the Lord's children go. You know what I mean? Freeing the slaves, who are the 12 chosen tribes of Israel, who are modern day Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. The same government system that America has patterned itself after, right? But the point is to, he's showing Pharaoh, just like the Most High is showing Donald Trump right now. You know what I mean? With all the things that's been happening all over the world, and particularly Salaki, in America, where you see these planes falling out the sky. I believe it was like 47 plane crashes. I'm not sure if it might have been more. Since then, or I think it might have been double that, like 80 something. I got to get the number correct. But point is, you see all these, you see all these things happening. You see all these plagues, this COVID-19, and this, I believe it's a new strand of COVID going around, or a new sickness going around, where they're getting ready to reinstate all of the COVID protocols that they did far too late last time Trump was in office. But you seeing all these plagues and things happening right before our eyes. And what's Trump doing? He's hardening his heart. Where he's refusing to let up on. The more things happen, the more he blames Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. You know what I mean? So it's exactly what you're seeing right now happening in America. You're seeing that same thing happen in Egypt, thousands of years ago. And that's what you're seeing right now. But Slaki, I digress. To get back to the point, to get back to the linguistics of the matter, we're familiar, even if you're not familiar with the Hebrew, even if this is your first class, right? Even if this is your first class, if you're not familiar with the Hebrew, you're familiar with the 10 plagues. Everybody knows about the destruction of Egypt. Even if you don't know nothing about the Bible, you know about the destruction of Egypt. All right. So you can use that to your advantage, where you can let me see. I'm gonna read it one more time, and I'm gonna just stop at certain sight words. And Moses, right? So and Moses, and is a preposition. We'll see it in a second. Moses is a name. So if you're not familiar with the name of Moses, we'll get it in a second. But those should be, those will be sight words, all right? Depending on where you at with it. Stretched forth his rod toward heaven. Heaven is Shemayim. We're going to see. So now we know, because we're going to be reading, the Lashawan Qadash, right? We know we're going to see Shemayim somewhere in there. All right. And the Lord is Yahweh. The Yahweh is the Most High's name. All right. And the Lord and Yahweh sent thunder and hail and the fire, right? So you see a lot of and is a preposition, is represented by the character wa. Right. And again, I'm just pointing it out. But again, we'll get it in a second, and I'll highlight it and I'll show you. But just letting you know, you see all these ands. You'll see Wah, like and Moses, Wah Mashah, and the Lord, Wah Yahweh, and the fire, Wah. So, okay. And the fire. We'll definitely see the character Wah, which means and. The character for the is Ha, right? And the word for fire is ash. And the fire, you're definitely going to see the phrase wa ha-ash or wa ash, right? Because a lot of times, you may or may not see that ha in there, right? So because our language is so militant and straight to the point, a lot of times those extra characters that kind of don't really, what's the word? A lot of those characters that don't really make or break the point, they drop off just for efficiency purpose. That's how our language is, set up. All right. Slacky, let me find my place. And the fire ran along upon the ground. The ground is Adamah or Adam. You might see one or the other. So depending on the context, right? So Adam or Adamah, right? So the ground is Ha-Adamah, right? And the Lord, Waha Yahweh. We just talked about Yahweh is the Most High's name, right? Usually represented by the Lord in all caps. So you see, and the Lord, and so Wah Yahweh, right? Wah Yahweh. That's what you'll see. Rained hail upon the land of Egypt, right? Land is Aratazah. You know that because as we're reading these 10 plagues, all of these plagues are happening where? In the land of Egypt. So that's the setting. That's the setting of what we're talking about. So in the Hebrew, you're going to see the land of Egypt, the land of Egypt, the land of Egypt, because that's the setting. That's the context, and that's the place where the story is taking place. All right. So, and the Lord rained hail upon the land of Egypt. So, and the Lord, Yahweh, and the Lord rained hail upon, you might see Isle in there. So Isle is upon. So Isle, Aratazah, Matazarium. A Shalom, Yahweh, Shem Shah, Barakatah. See, priest and officer, Barakia checking in. I see. But that's what you'll see. You know what I mean? You'll see a lot. You know what I mean? Especially as we go through a Sabbath service. If you attend Sabbath service, as you listen to brothers breaking that, or, you know what I mean, especially if you're a priest and officer, you're going to have to read that Hebrew yourself. All right. So you're going to be saying, Aratazah Matazarium, Ha'aratazah Matazarium, Ha'aratazah Matazarium, because that's where the story is taking place. It's taking place in the land of Egypt. All right. So we gonna get it. You know what I mean? We're gonna get it. We're gonna see exactly what you know what I mean, what I've been talking about this whole time. But the point, you know what I mean, the whole purpose of going through that is, you know what I mean, just to show you that once you go into you read it in the English, and it'll help you easily be able to pick out the sight words so that you can flow through just as easily as you read the Lashawan or Slaki, just as easily as you read the Hebrew. Salakia. Just as easily as you speak and read English, once you read it in English and associate it with the, you know what I mean, the word that you learned in the Hebrew, it'll be just that easy as well. You know what I mean? Once we make that connection. But all right, we're gonna go right into it. Let me put the full screen on. All right. Let's see. All right. And if you got Bible Hub, right? You got Bible Hub. If you got you might have Bible Hub on your phone. That's what I recommend, because when you're out, then you can just have it in your pocket. But you can also use Bible Hub on your laptop. It's a little bit different, and because you know what I mean, a laptop is generally able to process a lot more, you know what I mean, workload than your phone. You can get a lot more out of it. You know what I mean? So I recommend, I recommend brothers and sisters to have Bible Hub on your phone. It's actually a requirement if you are a priest and you once you get up there on Sabbath service. But I recommend brothers take a look at Bible Hub on your laptop as well, because you can do a little bit more, do a couple, you know what I mean, a couple different things on your laptop than you can on your phone. All right, and I'm gonna show you as well, you know what I mean, tonight as we go through class. All right, so I'm gonna read it in the Hebrew, and then we're gonna break it down. All right. Wayata Masha'ath Ma to Salaki Matawa Al Hashemayim Wayahawa Nathan Kwalath Salaki Wabarad Wathahalak Ash Aratazah Wayamatar Yahweh Barad Al Aratazah Matazarian. All right. Let's go back. Let me see if I can zoom in too. See if I can see that a little bit better. All right. Let me know, y'all, in the chat, in the comments. Let me know if y'all can see that. Just let me know how that is. It looks a little bit better on my end, a lot better. But and this is another thing too. Like this is I'm using a laptop right now. Especially, you know what I mean, if you get you one of them touchscreen laptops, you could just zoom right on in. You don't got to worry about doing no short, you know what I mean, uh you know what I mean, a shortcut and you know what I mean, all of that. Most High in Christ. But if you get you one of them, you know what I mean, touchscreens, you can just zoom in, zoom out as you need to, move it around, things like that, and you ain't got to worry about you know what I mean. You ain't got to worry about flipping back and forth with your phone and things like that. All right. So Wayata, right? All right. This is the same thing we talked about last week, right? This should be real familiar. Wayata, right? We talked. This was the first phrase when we first started. I believe it was in Exodus, the 6th chapter. But wherever we were, these are more plagues that the Most High was put in Egypt through Moses and Aaron. And it started just like this, Wayata. Right? Now we talked about a couple different things, a couple different concepts. So usually when you see a root word with three, usually a root word would have 2 to 3 characters in it. And what you would usually want to do typically is pronounce the last 2 characters together. But the reason why we're not is because if you hover over this root word, it doesn't do it as well as the one back home. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on it. But you hover over the root word, or you click on the concordance code, it'll give you the pronunciation. All right, and the pronunciation is nutta. That's the good night. What the hell? The root word is nutta. Nutta, right? So how do we get to? Let's go back. Salakia. Good night. Let me go back. So how do we get from nutta? Good night. Salakia, forgive my Salakia, my internet connection is terrible. It's giving me hell right now, but we're gonna try to get through it. All right. So the question you should be asking is, how do we get from let me put your question on the screen. So it's pronounced Wayata. Wayata, and I'm about to explain why that is. And that's that's an excellent question. That's the question we should be asking ourselves. How do we get from, because the root word is nutta. How do we get from nutta to Wayata? Well, like I believe the brother said as well, the prefix, he referred to the prefix. The prefix is that wa. Like you. That wa that you see in the front. That's the prefix. Or what's called a preposition. It's positioned before the root word. So wa is a preposition that means and you can see that right here highlighted in red down below. All right. So that's the preposition, right? Or the prefix, like the brother said. But now it leaves yata. Yata. So now how do we get from nutta to yata, right? There's something that happens, and we went over this last week, and it's a common thing that happens with the na, with a character or with the root word that starts with na, right? When you have a root word that starts with na and you add a preposition to it, often 9 times out of 10, that na is going to be replaced by the preposition. Usually when you add a root word, or slacking, usually when you add a preposition to a root word, it just goes in the front. Let's take the word for earth. Earth is aratazah. Aratazah. When you add the to the front, the is ha. So you just add ha to the front of aratazah, and now you just get ha aratazah. So that's typically what happens with any root word. But with a root word that starts with a na, instead of just adding it, like instead of saying wa nata, instead of saying wa nata, that, or instead of saying wa ya nata, because that ya is there to say he, right? So there's actually 2 prepositions attached there. So wa meaning and, ya meaning he, and then nata is the root word. But instead of adding waya to the front of nata, instead of saying waya nata, that ya replaces the na. I pray that makes sense. But that's what happens 9 times out of 10 when you see a character, or it's like a root word that starts with a na. Why the na gets replaced, I'm not 100% sure. I believe there's something, I would have to go into it, but there's the na with like one of the different, for lack of a better word, I don't want to say parts of speech, but stems, that's what it is. For like the different stems, the na is important for one of those. I would have to ask about that specifically, but the general rule, the baseline rule is when you have a root word that starts with a na, that na is replaced by the ya or the wa or whatever root or prefix is before it. All right, and it also sometimes happens with characters that starts with a ya, right? But it's one of those concepts that brothers and sisters kind of don't see often. So when it comes up, you kind of got to remind yourself, all right? But that's the general rule right there. That's a general rule. So wayata is based on the root word nata. That na gets replaced, so you got wayata. All right. Nata means to stretch forth or put forth, right? To stretch out. All right. And I believe that was to stretch out, extend, spread out, pitch, turn, pervert, incline, bend, bow. You know what I mean? All of those are synonyms to stretch out, right? Or to stretch. So wayata, right? And he stretched out, right? Who is the he, right? Because in the previous verse, or the previous phrase rather, it says, and he, waya. That ya means he. Waya and he. So who is the he we talking about? Moses. What's Moses' name in the Hebrew? Mashah, right? Drawn. Right? Drawn from the water. Mashah. Right? Let's see. Salaki. So that's if you're not familiar with the prophets' names, it's helpful to learn prophets' names for a couple reasons, right? So first of all, it's helpful so it could be a sight word while you read the Lashawan Qadash during Sabbath service and Lashawan Qadash class. That's one reason. But the main reason, the most important reason I would say, is because, you're surrounded by brothers and sisters in the school who got Hebrew names. So knowing these brothers' names, or knowing prophets' names rather, then you can understand not only some brothers' names, because some brothers are named after prophets, like Shalamah, Solomon. You got Yatazak is Isaac. You got I know I can't think of Knock, you know what I mean, out of Philly. You know what I mean, that's Noah. These are all uh well-known prophets in the Bible, all right? That even you know what I mean, even if you don't know the Bible, if you never read it a day in your life, you know these names and you know these prophets. All right. So it helps to know the names of the prophets so that you can know brothers' names. You can know where their name come from. You can know what their name mean and how it's pronounced properly. All right. And then of course, you know what I mean, you learn as many names. Then you learn their names and how their names is built, what their name came from, how they were named in the scriptures, is what I'm referring to. You know how these prophets got their name, where it came from, what it means. Then you can start to see how names are built as well. So when you see a brother or a sister's name that doesn't come from a prophet in the Bible or a famous name in the Bible, like you got some sisters, Judith, who else? Salakia. I'm drawing a blank right now. Sarah, you know what I mean? You see these names in the Bible. You see these names in the Bible, or you see these names, or you see these sisters that got these names, or these brothers that might have names, but they're not necessarily, they might be more unique. They're not necessarily named after a prophet, but their name is, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? A little bit more unique, for lack of a better word. You can kind of see, like, okay, I see how this brother's name was built. You know what I mean? I see where this name came from. And that's the benefit of learning the names of the prophets in the Lashawan Qadash. All right. So Wayata Masha Ath Mata Matahar Slakia Mata Matawa Salakia. Salakia. Good night. What the hell? Forgive me. Salakia. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move on. I'm waiting for this to, you know what I mean, to stop freaking out. It's jumping all over the place. But the next phrase is Masha Ath Matawa. Right? Right? So that phrase Ath just connects one thing to another. Right? It just connects one thing to another. The subject to what the subject is doing, or what the, you know what I mean, the subject to the action that's going on in the story, or whatever the case is. But that's all Ath means. And I'm gonna hover over that concordance code. If you can see that on the screen, it says sign of the definite direct object not translated in English, but generally preceding and indicating the accusers. All right, so it's just associating one thing to another. That's all it is. If you click on the concordance code, it's going to say that it doesn't have a definition, but it's like a conjunction. It's just joining one thing to another. That's all. That's the most simplest way that I could put it. All right. And then, so what is being joined here? So right here, you see Moses is being joined to the action. You know what I mean? So Moses is stretching out his staff to heaven, and the Most High is doing something because of it, right? So that's the purpose of that Ath, right? And the next phrase is Matawa, right? Matawa. right? This is another example of what we was talking about in the first phrase that we was talking about. So mata comes from the word nata, right? And again, when you have this is something, if it's something that's like, if this is a concept that's kind of like one of those, like, okay, I'll use myself for example. So it was, for me, this is one of those concepts that was kind of difficult for me to understand off the rip. And it was one of those things that I didn't see often enough to be able to just to get as fast as I will be able to understand, like prepositions, possessors, things like that. So this might be something that you have to, like, if you're in the school in Killeen, if you look on the board where you see the prepositions, possessors, I have a little marking, a little asterisk next to the character na and the character ya, so that you can know that you know what I mean, it's not a preposition or a possessive, or it's like it. The na rather isn't a preposition or a possessive, but it does function a little bit different than the other characters. All right. So if you're in the home school in Killeen, Texas, you know what I mean, you'll see that on the board. All right. But it's just one of those things that you'll just have to commit to memory. Right. So when you see it, and I'm explaining what's going on here. So nata is the root word, just like it was a root word here. Nata is the root word here. So where it says mata wa. So I'm gonna ask the audience, right? So based on what I broke down before, how do we get from nata to mata? Right? And if you was paying attention before, or if you was paying attention in previous classes, then this will be pretty simple. All right. Let's see. I'll give you a second just to see, because this might be a concept that it might take just a little bit longer to understand than like prepositions and possessors, or things that are like, you know what I mean, that are seen more often. But once you get it, you'll never forget it. And it's something that you're gonna need to understand to be able to understand, you know what I mean, how words are built. Like, how do we get from here to here? And that's what you want to understand. Like when you're reading the language or speaking the language, you want to understand how we got from this word to this word, right? That's why, you know what I mean, when we say, and I'm just, you know what I mean, I'm just giving y'all some time as I'm talking, but you know what I mean, that's why you hear certain things like, you know what I mean, you know what I'm talking about, or ain't, or y'all. It's easy to understand because we know how we got from here to here. We know how we got y'all because it's a combination of you all. You know what I mean? According to your English language. You know how you get, you know what I mean? Know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know how you got, you know what I mean? Because, you know, you got there from, do you know what I mean? And we just combined a lot of syllables to get, you know what I mean? Or now I'm talking about, you know, you got there from knowing that it came from, do you know what I'm talking about? You know what I mean? So I give y'all just a little bit more time, and then I'm going to break it down again. All right, I ain't seen no comments. No sweat. I know brothers and sisters that's gonna be watching this, you know what I mean, weeks from now, months from now, they're gonna be screaming at the camera the answer. Right. But I'm going to break it down anyway. You know what I mean? And if you're watching, you know what I mean, months from now, or weeks from now, whatever the case is, days from now, you go ahead and put the answer in the chat anyway. Get that algorithm up. But the reason why we go from mata to, or it's like your nata to mata, is the exact same reason why it happened in the first phrase. when you have a word that starts with a na, that na is replaced by whatever preposition is there. So instead of saying ma nata, the word like we're gonna see it with shamayim, right? Shamayim is a good, as a matter of fact, I'll show you what shamayim. So shamayim, which is the root word for heaven, which I told you is gonna be there. The root word for heaven is built off of the root word for water. It's just water, mayum, with the sha in the front. Right? So instead of saying mayum, it's shamayum. You just add the preposition and then you're done with it. You know what I mean? That's what typically happens, right? That's what typically happens when you add a preposition to a root word. You just, now it goes from a root word that has 3 characters to a root word that has 4 characters, right? But it's slightly different with a root word that starts with na, right? So instead of saying ma nata, just like how we did sha mayum, right? Instead of just adding the preposition to the root word, that ma replaces the na. So instead of ma nata, it's mata, right? Which is a variation of stretch out. Ma is a preposition that means of or from, right? So what you're basically saying is from, stretch out. Basically saying that this word is built from the word stretch out. That's the best way that I can describe it to make it easiest to understand. All right. So ma, instead of saying manata, it's mata. That na gets replaced. That na goes away. And then that ma is in place. So mata and then wa. That wa at the end of a prep or at the end of a root word means he, his, or it. So anytime you see it, it just means he, his, or it. Right? So mata wa. Right? Then I'll, like I told you at the beginning of the class, I'll just means over, above, upon, toward, let's see, upon, on the ground of, according to, on account of, behalf of, right? In addition to, together, I mean, things like that. And moving forward, Salakia, moving forward as we reading, just because I'm having a little bit of, you know what I mean, connection issues, just so we don't have any problems in the future, I'm going to just hover over the concordance code. If we need to go to a concordance code to find out what a root word means, I'm going to just hover over it. Let me see if you can see that. Oh, man. I can't even see if y'all can see that. Let me see. Salakia, bear with me 1 second. I just want to make sure. If you're able to see that as I'm hovering, the definition should pop up in all black. In all black and black and white. But if you're able to see that, just let me know. If you're not, let me know. Good night. Salakia, bear with me 1 second. I just want to make sure. But you know what? I'm going to leave it up to y'all. I'm sure y'all tell me. But moving forward, I'm going to just hover. I mean, it should pop up on the screen. I'm pretty sure it does. But if it doesn't, you know what I mean, just put it in the chat. And then, you know what I mean, that's the only way I'll know. If you know what I mean, help you. But let's get to the next one. So I'll just means, in this case, towards. But over, upon, to, toward. So that's pretty much, that's the easiest way to understand to. So Moses lifted his rod to heaven, right? So he had his staff, he raised it to heaven, and then we're gonna see what happened next. Wa Yahweh. So we know that preposition right there, wa, like we talked about before in the first phrase, wa means and, right? Wa means and. So and what? Yahweh, like we talked about when we was reading in English. Yahweh is the Most High's name, right? So why Yahweh and the Most High God? Because Moses did a thing, right? At the Most High's command, Moses raised his staff up to heaven, and Yahweh and the Most High God, Nathan, right, sent or give. Give is the, right, you see the, if you could see on the screen, Hebrew Strong's Hebrew 5414, to give, put, set, to give, bestow, grant, permit, ascribe, employ, devote, right, things like that. So Nathan, right, Nathan means to give or to send in this case. So he gave thunder and hail, right, to the ground, right. And I just want to point out, because there's no preposition attached to the beginning of this root word that starts with a na, this na isn't replaced by anything. Now, if you were to add a preposition to it, like the character ma, now Nathan becomes Mathan, right? So instead of the na being there, that ma will be there. And it'll be Mathan, which means gift. Instead of give, G-I-V-E, it'll be gift, G-I-F-T. Right? You try another preposition, ya, instead of saying ya, Nathan, or Nathan, it'll be yethan, which means to permit or to allow. Right? But you don't have any prepositions here, so that na is going to stay there. And it's just going to be a root word by itself, which is Nathan. Right? Salakia. All right, so Nathan, Kolat, Salakia, Kolat. Right? Which means thunder, which means thunder, and wa, Salakia, wa, Salakia, wa barad. Wa barad and hail. Wa barad. So wa would be the preposition. Barad would be the root word for hail or the Lord's judgment. All right. So Kwalat wa barad. Right. Watha halak. Right. Watha halak and Salakia. Wa is a preposition that means and. Tha is a, I believe, let me go to, I can't even access. As a matter of fact, I think I got it. Let me see. Let me see if my phone will act right. But I believe this is past tense, or I bar, what we got on the board at in Killeen, right? In the Killeen school. Salakia, I'm not in the Killeen school at the moment. So I'm unable to, you know what I mean, turn the camera and show you on the camera. But let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this in my email and then pull it up. All right. Before I go any further, let me see. But this is just, you know what I mean, while I'm retrieving this, Salaki, while I'm retrieving this, this is just like anything else. Salaki. It's just like anything else. This is one of the many Salaki, one of the many concepts. Salakia. It's one of the many concepts that, you know what I mean, we just gonna be recycling. I mean, it's gonna be a lot of these concepts that pop up, and we'll just eventually, you know what I mean, Lord willing, we'll just be able to look at them and be like, oh, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. And I know exactly what's going on here. because this, that, and the third. Good night. It's like I'm let's see. Good night. Okay. Well, I can't pull it up right now. Can't pull it up right now. But again, if you was in class, or you know what I mean, if you was in whether you was online or in class physically, you should have these things in your notes. All right. You should have them in your notes. You should take a picture if you're not able to write you know what I mean, at the time where class is live, so that you can write it later. Or you know what I mean, if you're watching in a future date, like if you're not watching live right now, you're watching, you know what I mean, maybe weeks, months from now, or whatever the case is, you can always pause the class, open another tab, or go to a different Lashawan Qadash class where we went over this topic and kind of brush up on this topic, then come back. All right. But what you're seeing right here is present tense or past tense, like it, past tense. That's why that thigh is there. So when you have a word that you're conjugating in past tense, or when you have a word where you're trying to show past tense, you have to conjugate it to show past tense. All right, so that tha, I believe, means either, I can't remember off the top of my head, but that tha means let's see, I believe it means past tense, how you would conjugate I in past tense for as a root word. Let me see. I really want to find this. Let me see. Let me try this real quick. Just want to be as accurate as possible. All right. Let's see. Good night. All right. No, that's not it. Salaki. I know what happened. But okay, Salakia. I don't want to spend too much time on that. But that has to do, long story short, that has to do with past tense. So if you're not familiar with it, just go back to your past tense notes. Or if you don't have past tense in your notes, maybe this might be your first couple times watching Lashawan Qadash class. You can just look up ISUPK Killeen past tense, or ISUPK Houston past tense, or ISUPK insert school name, or ISUPK city name, and then past tense, and it should pop right up, and it'll break down this whole concept. All right, and then halak means to go. All right, to go, to walk, to come, depart, proceed, move, go away. All right, things like that. Ash means fire. All right, as you see right here, I'm gonna hover over this concordance code. Fire, flames, supernatural fire, you know, fire. You know, you get the point. And then Arataza, Salakia. Arataza is land or earth. Should be a sight word. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Genesis, the first chapter. That's literally what that chapter. That's literally what the first couple chapters of Genesis is talking about. You know what I mean? The creation of earth. So Aratazah is all up and through Genesis, the first and second chapter. All right. And then Waya Matar. Let's see what this is talking about. Matar. Okay. I just want to make sure it wasn't the same concept we was talking about earlier with a nah. But Matar is rain, you know what I mean? Rain to be rained upon, to rain, send rain, right? So, and he reigned, right? Well, yeah, Matar, right? Who reigned? Yahweh, right? Which is, again, the Most High's name. Barad is the same Barad up here. Where we at? Back here, which is hail. So the Most High reigned hail. On is isle, right? Which means on, over, upon, you know what I mean, above, all of those different things. So isle, over what? On what? Aratazah. Aratazah is the land, earth, like you see down here in the English in the red. All right. Same exact thing. Right? What land? What land? Matazarium. So like we was talking about in the English. I read it in the English and it said the land of Egypt. I already told you because we already know we're talking about the context is dealing with what's happening in the land of Egypt. You're going to see land of Egypt being repeated over and over and over again in the Hebrew. So Aratazah Matazarium, Aratazah Matazarium, Aratazah Matazarium. Get used to hearing that. All right. Especially in the book of Exodus, the beginning half at least. You know what I mean? So Aratazah Matazarium. Aratazah is land. Matazarium is Egypt, right? Which means bondage, which mean or bondage, straits. You know what I mean, troubles, hardships, things like that. Which lets you know also, you know what I mean, for brothers and sisters who think that we're tied to Egypt, you know what I mean? We're only tied to Egypt because it was our land of our bondage, but we are not, we are not the same people. You know what I mean? So we call ourselves Egyptians. You know what I mean, we should absolutely not do that. The word Matazarium means bondage and straits. And you know that when you go to the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 30 or 68th verse, when it says you will go into Egypt again with ships. When it says go into Egypt and again with ships, it means hardships and bondage, which is, like we were saying before, America is modern day Egypt. America patterned its entire its architecture and its government system, you know what I mean, after our past captivities, one of them being Egypt. You know what I mean? That's why it's a big old what's it called? Obelisk and you know what I mean, things like that in the middle of what's it called? In the middle of DC. You know what I mean, just like in Egypt. That's why you see all the different parallels. That's why you see Slovakia. Bear with me 1 second. But that's why it says in Deuteronomy 28 and 68, and it says that we'll go into Egypt again with ships. Now that's a prophecy for the Most High God, but you know what I mean, we're not back in Egypt. You know what I mean? It's so heavy because black people, especially, we desperately trying to go back to Egypt. And either we never make it there, or when we go there, we realize that that's not, you know what I mean, that's not our home, and we're rejected from there. You know what I mean? So it's so heavy. That just doubles down on the fact that this is not talking about literal the landmass Egypt. When you see Egypt in the scriptures, when you see Egypt in Deuteronomy the 28th chapter, it's talking about the bondage that we were in Egypt. The word Matazar literally means Egypt, or it's like it literally means bondage, straits, troubles. You know what I mean? So when it says we'll go back into Egypt by way of ships, It's talking about the transatlantic slave trade. You know what I mean? The Spanish Inquisition, things like that, where we were brought into bondage, because our bondage isn't just in America. You know what I mean? Our Hispanic brothers and sisters are in bondage, and you know what I mean, in Europe, and you know what I mean, we scattered all across the earth. You know what I mean, in the same bondage, that we suffered in Egypt. You know what I mean, and we went by way of ships, but that's what that's talking about. But with that, we're gonna go ahead. Let me see what time it is. With that, we're gonna lock it off right there. Let's see. Make sure there any questions and comments. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Make sure you share the class to your relatives, to your, you know what I mean, to your loved ones and things like that. You know what I mean? Make sure you leave, even if you're watching this class late, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you know what I mean, things like that, so we get this algorithm up and get all your questions answered. And if you watching this at a time where we're not live and you got any additional questions, whether they Lashawan Qadash related or not, you guys go up in that you can hit that QR code in the top corner over there. And Morning Noon Tonight is gonna be a brother in there to answer all your questions and solve all your problems. All right. With that, say shalom, Yahweh Shem Yahushua Barakatham to all the brothers, and shalom, Yahweh Shemar Latham Ba'Shem Yahushua to all the sisters. Shalom.